Good morning. I'll call to order this meeting of the Taxes Committee for Wednesday, May 13th, 2015. My name is Abdi Warsame and I'm the chair of the committee. With me at the dais are council members Gordon, Cano, Reich, Bender, Long, Yang, Quincy, Glidden, Goodman, Fry, and Parmesano. I do apologize. And we do also have Council President Bob Johnson. Colleagues, we have a single discussion item on our agenda today, and that is the report of our Board of Appeal and Equalization. As you know, this special board is established under local authority for the purpose of arbitrating disputes related to the classification and market assessment of properties within the city. The board has the authority to decrease, sustain, or increase the market value of a property and to make those recommendations to this council for final action. In accordance with the city policy, the membership of the Board of Appeals and Equalization consists of a licensed realtor, a certified appraiser, and a freeholder or property owner. Staff has provided a report that details the work of this year's Board of Appeal and Equalization, which is linked from the agenda for this meeting. Here to present the report is our City Clerk, Casey Carl.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and may it please the committee, I'm here to present the 2015 report of the Minneapolis Board of Appeal and Equalization as required pursuant to the city charter and various state laws. Accompanying the RCA are the proceedings of the board from its meetings on April 27th and May 1st of this year. A synopsis of final actions and recommendations of the Board of Appeal and Equalization is also provided in a table listed as Attachment C with your agenda packets. Attachment D lists those properties where a concurrence was reached between the city assessor and the property owner. Attachment E lists those properties that were read into the record at the city level and are now therefore eligible for a hearing at the Hennepin County level with no further action required by the city of Minneapolis. This year, a total of 739 appeals were filed. That was an increase of approximately 36% in volume compared to last year. The board has specifically recommended changes in 487 assessments on properties within the city of Minneapolis, which requires the confirmation by formal action of the city council. Of the 739 total appeals, 191 were filed after the filing deadline, or inspections were unable to be completed before the board's hearing commenced. That's roughly 26% of the total volume of appeals that were received. Those properties are included in the list found in Attachment E, and those property owners do have the ability, as provided under state law, to appeal at the county level. The Hennepin County Board will meet in June. Of the 739 total appeals, 471 property owners reached concurrence with the city assessor's office on a lowered valuation prior to this year's hearings before the Board of Appeal and Equalization. That reflects approximately 64% of all the total appeals that were filed with the clerk's office, and these are included in the lists shown on Attachment D in your briefing materials. Not including those that were concurred in and the late filings already described, the city's board heard a total of 23 appeals this year. Pursuant to notice, the board convened an open session on Monday, April 27, were duly sworn and impaneled, and over the course of 2 days, the board received and considered these 23 qualified appeals and adjourned at 2:53 p.m. on May 1st, having completed its work. The disposition of those 23 qualified appeals is reflected in Table 2 on the front of your RCA. As you can see, 9 of those appeals have been recommended by the board to be sustained at their current value. A total of 484 properties were recommended to have reduced values, which has a potential total impact of just under 12%, or the difference of just over $2 million. 3 properties have been recommended for an increase with a potential impact of 8.6%, or roughly $27,500. The remaining 685 properties are eligible for an appeal hearing before the Hennepin County Board of Appeals. This committee is requested to act upon the recommendations submitted in the board's 2015 report. To restate, that would be to concur in the recommendation to sustain the current value of the 9 subject properties, to reduce the value on a total of 484 subject properties, and to increase the value of 3 subject properties, all as detailed in these materials that accompanied the RCA. On behalf of the city, I would like to express our sincere appreciation to the members of the city's Board of Appeal and Equalization. They included Ted Marinack, Sandy Lesher, and Earl Netwall. I also am grateful for the leadership of Julie Johnson from the clerk's office, who is here today. She administers this appeals process every year. This year, due to her leadership, we were able to work with the city assessor's office and the city coordinator's office through a business process improvement project to improve and streamline this process, not just internally, but also to improve our service to those who are appealing their property valuations and classifications, to make that process better for those who live in Minneapolis. And working with Julie Johnson is Kathy Barton, a temporary worker who usually provides seasonal support to our elections team. This year, we were able to bring her on board to help provide the front end of this process to our citizens. She worked with Ms. Johnson in terms of processing all of the appeals, scheduling them, getting the board on up to speed, training them, and attended all of the appeals in order to provide the support for that board. Kathy and Julie are both with us this morning, and again, tremendous thanks and appreciation from me. Before standing for questions, I also should note your city assessor, Patrick Todd, is with us, and I know he has some comments to make as well. So I will yield to the city assessor at this point.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Patrick Todd, Minneapolis City Assessor. I would just want to echo what the city clerk said as far as the process improvement. This was probably our best year ever as far as providing great taxpayer customer service, and as well as reducing the amount of stress that is involved in this process. We used to run like a dual system where property owners would start with our department. We would mail out applications. We would try to get these appeals taken care of, and then up to a certain point, if we were not going to be able to resolve all the cases, we'd have to flip them over to the city clerk or switch them to a city clerk Board of Equalization application. Instead of an informal review, it became more of a formal local board appeal, and it was extremely stressful for property owners because they didn't understand how they could fill out the form and not from within the city, us be able to move them from one process to another. And it was really through, again, Julie, as well as Kathy and Casey Carl's vision to say, you know, we think we can do it. And they actually took complete ownership of this process. And when we would still receive the phone calls, but we would send a link to the city clerk's website. And from that point on, they were into the system, and we never had to do any more of this transition from an informal to formal. They were into the system, and we handled it on the backside completely, seamlessly, and without any inconvenience to the taxpayer. So anyway, just before I want to start, I thought that was tremendous and probably worthy of a star award if anyone asks me. So, but just in my presentation, I get the pleasure of putting just some graphs and charts together to talk about maybe add some perspective from what Casey said, because most of the numbers that he was saying, you can see it in a little bit of context, it makes more sense. The Board of Equalization is a lot of the volume that we deal with. Oftentimes there's a correlation to what we're doing with the assessed values. And so on your very first page, it shows where we changed values in Minneapolis for January 2nd, 2014. Our commercial tax base went up 14%. Our industrial dropped by 26%, and that's not a bad thing. The reason why we dropped the industrial property values are dropping is because many of those industrial buildings are being converted to residential purpose. They're being converted to apartments, multifamily housing, or single-family homes. So it's not that the industrial values are declining. It's just a transition. These are the highest and best use is not industrial in Minneapolis anymore. It's residential in some of these older buildings. Residential, we saw an overall citywide increase of 6%, apartments 28%, which is a significant increase. We found that our overall appeals by apartment owners definitely went up as well. And in one of the other later graphs, it kind of bears it out at that point. Overall, City of Minneapolis, our tax base grew from around $36 billion to about $39 billion. So just to give you a historical perspective, we're up. We did have 739 appeals in 2015, which is up, like what Mr. Carlson was saying, or Casey Carl was saying, from 504. It does seem like we're trending up, but whenever we increase property values, that's just going to have to. That just does. It comes with the territory for the most part. So, but definitely within a manageable number. If you think about that, if City of Minneapolis was 130,000 parcels, if 1% of the parcels appealed, that'd be 1,300 parcels. So we're about half that. So less than 1/2 of the properties in Minneapolis appealed their value. So we're 99.5% happy. people are happy with their values. So anyway, if we switch it to the next page, this is appeals by ward, and I always thought that the council members would be interested to see how their ward compared on against other wards on their number of appeals. Councilmember Palmisano leads the list with 138, but it is down in overall number of appeals. You have seen some of the other neighborhoods going up, but there's not any significant ward that I would say jumped out at me as far as any particular volume as far as we were concerned. This is a graph that kind of talks to what Mr. Casey Carr was saying, the city clerk. We had 54 canceled. So the cancels are in a situation where a property owner calls, fills out the application, we set up the appointment, we go out and take a look at it. We come back, we do our analysis, and we sit down with the property owner or over the phone. We'll sit down, we'll talk with them, and we'll say, we think the value's fine, and here's why. Here's sale number 1, here's sale number 2, here's sale number 3. Or maybe in a situation of an apartment building, here's the income and things like that. They agreed and they dismissed. So they just needed to have some confirmation that we took a second look at it. The concurrences prior to the board, there were 471 of those. So these are people that we went out, took a look, said, you're right, your value is too high. We think that it's more fair and reasonable, and they agreed, and so we were able to get them taken care of, and there were 471. Board decisions, these are people we took a look at. The offer we made to them, they just felt it was not the right fair value, so then they continued on to the board, which is their option, their appeal option, and then we did have, I think 9 that were held, and then 3 that were increased, and the remainder were reduced. So late applications, these are people after we had the filing deadline. They just turned in their application too late. They do not lose their appeal option. They just don't get to be heard before the local board. They are allowed to go to the county board, and my staff are setting up appointments with these individuals at this point, hoping that we can get out to the properties, do the appraisal. If it does need to be dropped, we can make that recommendation, and they don't have to go to the county board. If they don't agree with our value, then they are allowed to go before the county. Not able to schedule, there were 53 of those. So some of the situations where a property owner files, it's mostly multi-filers and they wait till the last minute. And if they're filing 25 or 30 buildings at a time, there's just not enough time for my staff to inspect all 30 and come back, do the appraisals, and get the values to the owner before a decision's made. So therefore, we have an agreement with the property owner that in order for us to do it fairly and accurately, that we'll just move them to the county and then we'll continue to work with them. And that's really the everything on that. Appeals by property type. Again, just kind of nice to know. You saw, apartments went almost doubled from 48 up to 90. And again, when we move property values up 28%, that's just a normal corresponding increase. There really wasn't a lot of other change. Condominiums did go from 16 to 94, but we did see condominiums go up a significant amount over this last year too. So last but not least on my slides, this is nice to know. Just we take a look at this statistic to try to figure out, is there one segment of the market that is being maybe overly valued, or there's just something else going on that we might be harming a property owner by, maybe in a certain segment of the market. This might be entry-level values or values within that, middle income or upper bracket. And in this case, on the very bottom, the 2 largest sections are actually property values at $250,000 on up. And so a number of those, though, would be apartment buildings. The ones that really made the most significant difference is that our apartment buildings are sitting at values greater than $250,000. And so I think that's a lot of right there. Besides the apartments, then we would have the single family. I did kind of look through the list, and when I sorted them by value, apartments definitely led number 1, followed by the residential and condominiums after that. So that's all I have. Every year, Councilmember Goodman asks me for a list of all the applicants by ward so that she can take a look at who in her ward has appealed and what type of results they received. I had my staff prepare that, and I hope that you have that in your mailbox as we speak, and if it's not there, it'll be there shortly after this meeting. It was ready to go this morning, but it is all the people in your wards that appealed, and it'll say either was concurred, a board case, late applicant, or whatever the case may be. So, and it'll also give you a before value and an after value. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you to both Mr. Call and Mr. Todd. And is there any questions for staff? Council President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Todd, looking at this list of the board actions, there are a couple that jump out of people who really were, what's the word I want to say, overvalued. One is almost 100,000, or actually $100,000 plus, and another one of $60,000. What do you do when you find something that's that out of whack? Do we look at how we got into that situation, or there's
Through the chair,
one on
Councilmember.
Edmond Boulevard, another one on 2500 Clinton Avenue.
Through the chair, Council President Johnson, I'm not really knowledgeable in that. Usually it's a data issue. Usually the condition or the data is wrong on the information, and when we get into it, we go, you're right, it's not an average plus, it's in fair condition, and we'll go back and we'll reduce the value because of that it's seldom because of square footages. Our square footages are fairly rock solid. The quality of construction we have well pegged, it's usually condition.
But having said that, I mean, if you get to the point of needing to come to the board because you've got 100 and the board lowers you to 100,000, have we had that conversation with this person before they come to the board?
Is that one on the River Road? Is that what you're
Edmund, yep.
Okay. That particular case is a little bit more unique. And in that, we evaluated it, we appraised it as its highest and best use is as an owner-occupied unit, because it's on the River Road. It's on a 15,000 square foot lot. It's got a view of the river. The board felt that it was more valued, should have been more appropriately valued as income-producing property. Where we differ is that the rents generally don't go up with the more yard you have and with the amount of view that you have. And we felt that the typical buyer will pay more for a view, more for the lot. So therefore, we valued it that way. They had a very different approach, and they said if the rents can't support it, the value has to go down. And so that was a complete differences of opinion. When it sells, we'll know which way the buyer was going.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Todd.
Okay,
Any other
thank
questions? Councilmember Goodman.
It wouldn't be a taxes meeting without me kind of challenging Mr. Mr. Todd on a few things. I just do want to point out that it does seem that there are a much larger number of appeals at properties at 250,000 or more. And that even if all 90 were apartments, that's still only 20% of the total of 422 that have been appealed. So I'd be interested in the future at how many, it seems like either people who have property values that are lower think they're fair or don't know how to appeal. And people who have properties at 250 or more know how to appeal or think that they've been treated much more unfairly because there's a very large number in that category. So I guess in the future, I'd be also interested in seeing how many properties that we assess fall into each category, because really the only way to know if these higher end properties are targeted is the percentage of people that are appealing compared to how many of the properties there are. And so that might be good information to have. I looked at that list. There were quite a few in my ward. Almost every one that was appealed, the valuation was dropped. Some of them substantially, and one of the most notable ones was kept the same in the board process. So I'd be interested to know if, in fact, properties at 250,000 are being targeted for higher valuations or not. And I could only know that if I get the percentage of appeals compared to the percentage of those numbers of properties, and maybe next year we can consider that. I don't need to have it for this year.
Okay, absolutely. I'll make a note of that.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing no questions. Yep. Oh, sorry. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm noticing that for condos, there was probably a 7-fold increase in the number of appeals. Granted, the number of condos have gone up, but do we have a reason for that? Is just valuation increasing dramatically, or is the value of downtown going up, or what exactly do you attribute to that It's a 7-fold increase. I don't see that. Not even close. I don't even see the 2-fold increase on anything else.
Through the chair, Councilmember Fry, I would expect that condominiums are on the rebound as far as values go. That we did increase property values in the condominiums. I couldn't tell you if it was downtown or if it was in the neighborhood condominiums, but statistically, and kind of getting back to the Councilmember Goodman, it's, even though it's up sevenfold, it's still such a small percentage of the total. Again, when 0.5% of the city doesn't appeal their value, it doesn't mean that they're all happy with it, but it seems like there's we're more right than wrong on many of these. And I can't exactly give you an answer for why that would be, but statistically, we're down to a fairly acceptable range of when you're doing 130,000 values a year, and you're only, we're missing on 400 and some. And again, when we go through and we can get those things corrected, I think, again, I can check into it, but I think it's just going to be, we raised values and some of the more expensive ones downtown were probably moved up to be competitive with what things are selling for.
And so some very good points, and I don't question your reasoning at all. I just want to make a broader point about how, broadly on the council right now, we've been encouraging people to live in a dense environment. We're trying to grow the city. We're wanting people to move downtown and trying to double the downtown residential population. And and simultaneously, however, we're seeing the prices, the values, and thus the property taxes, these condos go up dramatically, not just a little bit, I mean dramatically, combined with, Nicollet Mall assessments, combined with assessments for street cleaning, and we've got businesses that are paying DID fees. I mean, they're getting hit about 15 different ways right now, and I just wanted to make that general point.
Sure. And just one comment to the chair is that we follow the market at this point. So I agree that if these values, these sales are occurring and they're escalating, that my staff are following it. We're absolutely not leading the market, meaning that we aren't in any way, shape, or form trying to anticipate where the market is. It's only after we take a look at the last 12 months, we'll say, where are we? When this building sells for, this unit sells for 700, where was our assessed value? And if we're sitting at 550 and there's a consistent ratio there that we need to be up closer to that 90 to 105, we have to move it to wherever we can be more competitive. And if we have to go back and look historically and go, last year we were at 85%. Before that we were at 87%. You can truly trend that we're chasing the market as the market goes up. So I completely agree that the taxes are a significant part of people's decision making going downtown, and actually goes for any part of Minneapolis for that matter. But we're very historical, and we only move values up when the market has told us that we need to move it up to be consistent and to be within statutes. So,
Thank you, Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Todd, I appreciate the difficulty of this exercise, and I have a question in regard into the single-family homes aspect of the appeals by value range. In Southwest Minneapolis, there are massive amounts of new construction, and there are homes built with purchased in that range and then torn down to build new, much higher priced homes. Does that play into this 223 number and the $250,000 to $500,000 range? Is it because one of the market difficulties in Southwest Minneapolis is that people sell homes in that range to be torn down, and thus we are overvaluing the homes that are in that range? Or I'm just wondering if you could comment on that as it pertains to Southwest Minneapolis.
sure. Through the chair, Councilmember Palmisano, the land value, and when we assess properties, is we value the overall property first. We subtract out the land value, and then the remainder is the building value. So first and foremost, we say, what is it worth? It's worth $500,000. So now what's land worth? Well, in maybe your particular area, land might be worth $200. So then we'll attribute the difference, $300, to the building. So it's not an accumulative valuation process. Let me put it that way. We don't say the lot's worth $200, then let's figure out what the building's worth, and then we add the two together to come up with that number. Because if we did do that, you're right, the value of the land would then, as that goes up, would increase the overall value. But we actually say, what's the building worth first? Subtract out what we think the land is worth, and that just attributes the difference to the building. So I would not say that because your land values are going up, that's artificially increasing the property values. But we would say that the people that are buying these buildings are actually giving us a better read on what land is worth when we appropriate or apportion the land to building ratio. Does that make sense? Okay.
Councilmember Frye.
One more point that I forgot to mention before is I wanted to refute the myth that everybody who owns a condo is loaded. I mean, and I know you don't believe that, but I just wanted to say this out loud, that a lot of the condos that are downtown are people who are quite old, who are on a fixed income, that have not had any money for quite some time, and simultaneously the property taxes are going up dramatically. In fact, we just voted on one item of an individual that was having a really rough time paying nickel and mall assessments, and we had to expand it over 20 years, and I'll tell you, it was a very small amount of money. But we still, notwithstanding that, we still had to do it to just allow him to get by. So these increases in valuations have a dramatic impact, especially to those in condos, because the valuation is going up, and especially to those on fixed income, which is a large percentage of the total.
Okay. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to shift topics a bit, and this isn't really probably a simple question, but I was curious, since you talked about how we have a 9% increase in our total assessed value of land and property in the city, do you know how that compares to other adjacent communities in our region?
To the chair, Councilmember Bender, I don't have, I think I could acquire that information if I needed to. I can call the Hennepin County assessor, and they have their assessments broken out by cities, and so we could compare Edina and Eden Prairie and stuff. It might be more valuable to compare Minneapolis with Ramsey County or Hennepin County as a whole versus the smaller cities. But if you like it, if you could let me know what level, if city to city is fine, I think I can get that information. If you want to do county to county, I can do that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'll follow up and just see what you think might make sense to understand better kind of how our property values are changing in the context of our region.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no questions, I will move acceptance of the 2015 report of the Board of Appeals and Equalization, and to approve all recommendations submitted for those appeal presented this year. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the 2015 report of the City's Board of Appeals and Equalization is hereby approved. That item will be forwarded for the final consideration by the City Council at its regular meeting this Friday. Before we adjourn, I would like to thank Patrick Todd, our City Assessor, Rebecca Malquist, Director of Assessments, and their staff, as well as Mr. Carl, our City Clerk, and his staff, and in particular, Kathy Bartman and Julia Johnson for the work they've done on this report. Thank you very much. And seeing no further business before the committee, we are adjourned. Thank you.